We are a think tank actively working with civil society organizations in Colombia and the Global South, as well as international partners and cooperating organizations, academia, and the public sector in our two areas of work, collective intelligence and political advocacy. I did mention I am the coordinator for the collective intelligence team. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. At Instituto, we dream of a work toward a democracy with greater responsiveness and higher quality decision-making processes. We research and design strategies for open government, particularly open data and transparency, accountability, public innovation and participation, deliberative and representative democracy, and we also work on training for public leaders, multi-stakeholder forums, dialogue, consultation, and deliberation among civil society. This is with social leaders, politicians, private sectors, and organizations. This is how our work is centered and how it's focused. In Demo.Reset in particular, we promote collective action, knowledge management, and research on deliberation coming from the Global South. This process is promoted through an international community of practice constituted by leaders, democracy practitioners, and civil society organizations, which is all of you guys present today here, and who we thank the commitment to Demo.Reset as community of practice. We started this project in 2021, and we connected with more than 200 organizations and practitioners across sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, India, and Eastern Europe, who work in deliberative democracy and citizen participation, strengthening democracy and citizen processes in the Global South. Today, we are starting this process. Today is our new door being open for you all, Demo.Reset 3.0, in which we will share insights on how to make the liberation model to last, to be replicated and sustained over time. That's our goal for this version of Demo.Reset. And we will be working into key areas. First one being mentoring model focus on generating sustainability pilots, and the second one being positioning Global South deliberation models and share knowledge in local, regional, and global deliberation networks. The mentorship program on sustainability is where the journey begins today. In Model 1, sustaining deliberation in the Global South, solid foundations for deliberative models. This is the new door that is being open session masterclass. I thank you all for being here, and hopefully from here on we keep connecting and working alongside to explore new insights on how to make the deliberations model last, be replicated and sustained. And of course, we give you tools to keep on your work and learn about your own experiences. It's what keeps Instituto and keeps everyone in this team working. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all. Now, I will give the word to my team to continue hosting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So before we begin, I would like to remember you that this is an open space. Any questions are welcome. The chat is always available. So please, you can share your thoughts over there. Try to keep your microphone mute and activated only if you want to talk. If you feel comfortable, we invite you to open your camera, and remember to use the raise hand function. Remember that this is a multicultural space. We have many nationalities here in this space. So the English is not our first language. So be patient. If you don't understand something, put it in the chat. We can repeat and clarify anything that you need. Before we give it the word to Antara, that is the protagonist of this open session today, we will want to open this session thinking about why it is essential to strengthen and promote deliberative models as a legitimate democratic mechanisms in the Global South context. I encourage you to share your ideas and thoughts by the chat. Meanwhile, I talk a bit about this. In many countries across the Global South, democracy exists, but it often feels incomplete. Elections happen, institutions formally exist, but at the same time, we see deep inequality, exclusion, fragile institutions, and growing distrust in public authorities. So the question is not whether democracy exists, but whether it truly works for everyone. This is where sustainable deliberative models becomes essential. First, they help address structural democratic gaps. In many Global South contexts, participation is still largely reduced to voting every few years, but democracy cannot be limited to elections. Deliberative model expand participation beyond the ballot box. They create structured spaces where citizens reflect, dialogue, and influence decisions that affect their lives. More importantly, they intentionally include historically marginalized voices, people who are often excluded from formal decision-making spaces. So, by doing this, deliberative models contribute to more inclusive and representative governance. They don't replace representative democracy, but they deepen it. Second, we also believe that deliberative model could help rebuild trust and democratic legitimacy. In many contexts, citizens distrust political institutions, and often that distrust is not irrational. It is rooted in experiences like corruption, inefficiency, or broken promises. In many contexts, citizens so in these cases, well-designed deliberative process can contribute to change this dynamic. So they can transparency, they can clarify how decisions are made, they improve accountability, and perhaps, and most importantly, they foster shared ownership of public decision. When people see that their voices are not just heard but meaningfully incorporate legitimacy grounds, the, the legitimacy grounds and trust increase. A third element that we want to put in the table is that deliberative models are critical for responding to complex social conflicts. Many Global South countries face overlapping and deeply interconnected challenges like inequality, environmental degradation, social fragmentation, post-conflict reconstruction, rapid urbanization. These are not issues that can be solved through top-down decisions alone. So deliberative models create spaces for dialogue across differences. They reduce polarization by shifting the focus from confrontation to problem solving. They help building consensus around complex public issues where there are not simple answers. And again, sustainability matters. Social conflicts evolve, political contexts change, so the mechanisms must be able to adapt over time, not disappear when short-term funding cycles end. And another important element is that sustainable deliberative models strengthen institutional capacity and governance. When deliberation becomes institutionalized, when it recognized as a legitimate part of public decision making, it is improves policy quality. It allows government to integrate citizen knowledge into policies, and also it strengthens public sector responsiveness. And over time, this, as you already know, this contributes to better governance and more sustainable development. Finally, we must recognize something important. So, the Global South is not just a place with democratic deficit, it is also a space of democratic innovation across Africa, Latin America, in Asia, Eastern Europe. Communities have developed participatory budgeting, community assemblies, citizens' juries, indigenous consultations, mechanisms practiced rooted in local histories and social realities. So, promoting these models as a legitimate democratic mechanisms means recognizing that democracy doesn't not have a single universal form. It can and should be shaped by local cultural histories and collective experience. So, strengthening deliberative is not only about improving participation, it's about redefining what democracy can look like. It in contexts marked by inequality and diversity. In short, those scenarios are essential because then deepen inclusion, rebuild trust, manage conflict, strengthen governance, and advances democratic innovation. And perhaps, but most importantly, it reminds us that democracy is not just a system, it's an ongoing collective practice that we can build together. So, based in the short speech, we want to present you a brief presentation about what we understand in this project as a sustainability. Overall sustainability models, deliberative models in the Global South. So I give you the floor to Fabian Ardila, who will present this section for all of you. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Amazing.
Hi.
Hi, I am Fabian Ardila. I am a professional in this amazing process, and I am here to talk about all this process, about the approach in sustainability of models and practices, of deliberative and practices in the Global South. Give me 1 second. So, when we review a global landscape, we see something paradoxical. Never before have been so many democratic innovations, yet at the same time, many of them suffer from intrinsic fragility. Academic literature and our own experience in the field show us that many of these exercises end up being episodic events conditioned by the volatility of political will or dependence on short-term funding. Therefore, for this version of the project, we have ventured into a process of action research that initially involved the development of an initial conceptual characterization of the sustainability of deliberative practices and models, also known as the deliberative sustainability. And this construction was based on a review of literature that yielded a crucial first finding. The specific academic production on this topic is almost non-existent. Therefore, in order to structure this state of art approach, we had to analyze bibliography from other fields of knowledge and related areas of practices. This allows us to understand the issue from a complex systems logic, which integrates four major approaches. Meli can go to the next. Okay, no. So, the first approach is the political institutional uh, focus, which addresses normative permanence and the legal anchoring of processes. The second refers to an organizational approach centered on hybrid business models and corporate resilience. Another trend situates the social cultural perspective, which analyzes legitimacy and social capital. And finally, we identified the epistemic dimension, referring to processes of learning and knowledge adaptation in the face of complexity. These dimensions allow us to structure the concept based on a holistical analytical framework that goes beyond the traditional view, which tends to restrict the sustainability fields and knowledge solely to financial or environmental viability. From these integrations emerge a proposed definition that will guide these mentorships. Melik can go to the next slide. So we understand the deliberative sustainability as a systemic capacity of a part of the participative processes to endure over time, adapting to change environments, and maintain their transformative potential through the balanced integration of robust legal institutions, diversified financial viability, and social legitimacy rooted in a political local culture. So we are pleased today in this opening session to expose a few of these a few of insights of this initial characterization that understand the sustainability not as a final state to be achieved, but as a dynamic process of prospective thinking or futures thinking and risk management. The objective here is to overcome the temporal discrepancy between social learning cycles, which are developing long term, and electoral and market cycles, which are short term. Can go to the next slide, please. So, this systemic capacity is structured around five key factors, determining factors, each composed of sub-factors that interact between them virtuously, making them independent. So we begin with with the first factor, the appropriate model design and adaptation to the local context. Can go to the next slide, please. So, the premise here, one second. The premise here is clear. There are no universal recipes. Sustainability begins with a rigorous diagnosis of social gaps and the local political culture. To, sorry. um, Restart. So, The premise here is clear. There are no universal recipes. Sustainability begins with a rigorous diagnosis of social gaps and the local political culture. Two key points stand out here. The first one is the exchange and recognition of knowledge, or diálogo de saberes. That is a category that emerges from intercultural and horizontal process of exchange. Is a Latin America category. For this process in deliberative sustainability implies that preventing a technocratic vision from silencing, pardon, sorry, silencing the lived experience of citizens, making it essential that the design include explicit pedagogy to level knowledge. The second highlight is the methodological flexibility, and it refers to this sustainability model must not be rigid. It must have the capacity to adapt to unexpected internal or external crises such as natural disasters or social upheaval. Knowing when to use lighter tools in order to not force deliberative exercise that the community cannot sustain at the moment. A second factor refers to the links and impact with public institutions and actors. Thank you, Melly. And it is not enough to open spaces for participation. A sustainability deliberative practice must ensure effective advocacy processes. Citizens must be informed about the status of their proposals through traceability mechanisms and information transparency. Likewise, the sustainability of these links improves significantly through ideological, political, and cultural inclusion, which shields the process and foster a consensus. This should organically orient the model towards the formation of the thing that we know as multi-stakeholder advocacy platform that facilitate a collaborative governance and reinforce the legitimacy of the practices. And the legitimacy it's the focus of the third factor. The third factor focuses on community anchoring and social legitimacy. And here it argues that no institutional architectures survives without social legitimacy. This is achieved throughout the approaches of center on people and their experiences, prioritizing everyday and territorial knowledge over administrative abstraction or approaches, what we call maintaining and strengthening a bottom-up approach. From these factors emerges an early warning: the citizens' tendency to recognize public problems, but do nothing about them. To reduce this eclecticism, it is crucial to strengthen the vocation for social transformation through constant training, collectivization of initiatives, media mobilization, and above all, the demonstration of concrete impacts and visible transformation. A fourth factor focuses on internal strengthening of the model and its alliances. Please, Melik, can go to the next slide. Thank you. For deliberation to not be episodic, not to be episodic, the organization must professionalize its management through five technical components. The first one, it's institutionalized governance that standardizes technical quality and ensures operational continuity beyond trusting political will. The thin sense of purpose and conviction around a shared mission. The network reflection to avoid the team to be isolated and foster collaborative learning. The incorporation of roles such as friction managers, responsible for anticipating and resolving tensions among actors with opposing interests, and the integration of self assessment and risk management mechanisms. Finally, a fifth factor addresses the operational support necessary for the long term resilience of the practice. Here we manage the tension mentioned it at the beginning of this talk between the short cycles of politicals and markets and the long cycles of social change. We speak, we speak of transitioning toward a long-term culture using tools and methodologies for future analysis and risk diversification. The material sustainability and especially the financial sustainability requires a mixed revenue matrix with public, private, and self-generated funds that reduce the fragility and avoids the mission drift, which often occurs when depending on only a single funder. Also added to this, the importance of maintaining collaborative networks that facilitate access to shared infrastructure, materials, and capacities, such as specialized technical alliances that contribute methodological rigor to processes. And finally, we speak of strengthening organizational or institutional memory to avoid the restarting practices when new actors arrive to the process, thus preventing the loss of accumulated social capital. To close this conceptual section and give the floor to Antara, I would like to emphasize that this theoretical elaboration will remain in progress and will be nourished by the critical positions and situated reflections that you contribute throughout the development of the mentorship program. So we'll work on that. Thank you very much. I now give you the floor, Antara.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me just pull up my screen. Fabian and Melissa, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for taking us through Demo.Reset's work as well as the concepts, the very, very big and important concepts that we're going to go into today. Melissa, should I share my screen? I can. Yes, okay, fantastic. Just give me a minute. All right, can everybody see my screen? Yes. Okay, super, super. So thank you all so much for being here. We have about another hour and a half together, and I'm really excited to take you through some of my experiences personally in this domain. And a lot of this experience is actually rooted in about 10 plus years of having worked in the civic engagement and technology domain. I run an India-based nonprofit called Civis, which works to engage citizens on draft laws and policies. So before we go ahead, I just wanted to spotlight a few very special people in this room. As you know, the Demo.Reset program is a mentorship program, and it would not be half as fun without the wonderful mentees that we have joining us. So I'll quickly spotlight the organizations, and I'll just request you to come online if possible. Just switch on your video and say hi to everyone so that they can also get a sense of who's there in the room. So from Mexico, we have the practice known as Abrir Congresos. If anyone's here, you can just switch on your video and say hello. The organization was founded in 2022, and they do fantastic work between engagement of citizens and government. It's an open governance tool, and I'm really excited to learn more about it over the coming months as well. We'll then move to Europe, where we have a wonderful team from Kosovo that's joining us. If you want to put on your videos and say hello. Folks, we also are very mindful of the fact that it's very, very early in Mexico as well as in Colombia, where the Demo.Reset team is joining us from. So if you don't get to see them right now, definitely look them up on LinkedIn. From Kosovo, we have the team Dialogue for Rural Future. It's a network of organizations that focuses on rural development, founded in 2013, and again does fantastic work between citizens to government. From Kenya, we have the participatory practice, which is citizen assemblies for climate change and solutions in gold mines. Again, really, really interesting work. And it has been founded as a deliberative practice in 2020. Again, a citizen to government focus. So you'll see that there are some similarities in the different work that we're doing across the globe, and that's part of why personally I'm really excited to be a part of Demo.Reset and the work that we're doing together. The last but not the least is a practice from Indonesia. It's last but not the least, it's just in the East. It's a practice from Indonesia called the Youth Deliberative Lab, which is founded and run by the incredible organization Kota Kita. They have a team of young and lovely colleagues who are working on solving for this very interesting issue, and again, citizen to government. So this is very, very interesting. And the reason is because a lot of our work actually looks at how do we use institutional support and how do we enable citizens as individuals to actually speak to a big institution like government. That being said, there are still some very key issue areas that we're all facing, all of us together. One is that legitimacy and the ability to mobilize support is an issue that all different in all of our different geographies is still a problem. And to be honest, it's a big problem for us in India as well. The second is resources and actually thinking about having a for-profit and non-profit venture. How do you build these hybrid structures for organizations that meet the same goal, but from two very different vantage points, and scalability and replicability. So these are some of the organizations as well as the challenges that we're going into. Today, I'm going to focus a little bit more on tools that we can use and that I have found helpful in my own experience working at Civis, and sharing how those tools can be put into practice in not just these mentee organizations, but also globally and across the globe. So I will just, before I go into all of the slides, I just want everybody to do a little pulse check. Send me an emoji about how, which reflects how you are feeling right now. You can react with an emoji in your chat bar, just so that we have a little bit of an understanding of how everyone's feeling this early morning. Melly needs some coffee. Andrea is on rocket fuel. Who else? All right, Leo and Amma are all thumbs up. Lovely to see so many thumbs ups. Alma, I'm glad to see you're celebrating. I am too. Alejandro, thank you for keeping the hearts coming our way. I appreciate it. Thank you, Anil. Samuel, appreciate that. All right, fantastic. So no thumbs down, which is a good place to be. Thank you, Rajeshwari. I got that thumbs up as well. No thumbs down, which is a great place to be. As we go ahead, I just wanted to kind of mention two things. Thank you, Mohammed. That I wanted to set the pace for at least this segment of the conversation. While it's a masterclass, it's not being led by a master, right? This is part of what the work that I really love and love doing here is that we have so much to learn from each other as well. So I want to keep this conversation like that, like a conversation. I want to hear from you. I will be keeping a close eye on the chat, and very kindly, Fabian and Melly have also agreed to help me with that. We will just make sure that we are engaging and interacting. And also, while the slides cover many tools, I want to make sure that they are relevant and important for you. Yeah. So if you have used something before, just feel free to put that in the chat box to say that we've used it before. And if you feel like you want me to slow down and stop and focus on something a little bit more as well, time permitting, I'm happy to do it. So please use the chat box like your own space. This conversation will really be so much fun because we will be in it as a conversation. With that, I can perhaps get started. So my task for today was actually to outline what are the crucial building blocks for a sustainable intervention. Fabian went into what do you need in terms of diagnosis, discovery, problem identification, and then from there, how do you scale that up into an organization? As the first open session, I will really be focusing on how do you understand your problem better and how do you design a scalable solution, which will then be taken forward in open sessions 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm hoping that even though it's not just all mentees in this group, that some of you will stay with us for the journey of the open sessions as well. So when we're thinking about democracy, it's a big word. And it evokes a lot of feelings. I don't know if any of you have a particular way you feel when you hear the word democracy. As nerdy as it sounds, I get goosebumps. But in the chat, please tell me, how do you feel when you hear the word democracy? Do you feel powerful? Do you feel agitated? Do you feel like it's a missed opportunity? I want to hear all of it. For me, democracy, and if we are to talk about it, it actually reminds me of a well-oiled engine, right? There are multiple gears that make a democratic system, and these gears can be described as one, which is a citizen gear, right? Another one, which is a government gear, a third, which is media, and a fourth, which is civil society. So today, I assume most of us come in the citizen and civil society gears. But for any engine to actually work, all of the gears, all of the little parts need to move in sync and at the right time for the engine to move forward, right? And that is something that I find to be a very interesting analogy because in our work, our role is to help these gears move smoothly together. Now, what does that mean exactly, right? I'll just share. Melly, good point. Democracy could mean a lot of things. It is very confusing as well. I'll just share a little bit about what this analogy could look like, right? So today we cannot imagine the media to fulfill the role of government. Government will have a very fixed role in the system, which is to ensure service delivery, which is to ensure social protection. Their gear will keep spinning in the same loop, right? We cannot suddenly expect them to play the role of media in actually broadcasting news, or they might have a news function, but being critical of government processes. That's not going to be the role that government takes. Similarly, media and civil society can work together, but they can never replace each other's roles in any democratic system. So we need, in many ways, to be the interconnection between these gears so that they can function more smoothly and our democracy can continue to grow. In my perspective and from my understanding, sustainable programs actually understand these roles of government, of media, civil society, and citizens very, very, very well. And they then design not to change the role, never to change the role, but to support and supplement the role. And that's something that I wanted to speak about here today. So before I proceed, are there any gears that I might have missed that are not on the diagram? Anything that comes to mind? Okay, I can answer this question. Thank you. Thank you. We're getting some good answers. While we wait for others to put down which gears we're missing, somebody asks, how about legislative or House of Representatives? So yes, very much. That is, in at least my understanding, a part of the government gear. It's a small part of the larger government machinery, but it's a very important part. And I'd love to hear, Icha, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, how you are engaging with the legislature as well. Academics, very, very important gear that we've missed. In addition to that, we've missed one big one. Does anyone want to wager a guess? Constitution. That is also very much the international cooperation. That's correct. That's correct. Administration. Thank you, Mohammed. That is correct. That is actually the answer that I was looking for, the private sector. We also have to factor in how industry and how other private sector bodies actually fit into our larger democratic picture. We can't will them away, but at the same time, they play a very, very important role and function that we need to understand how we can leverage and make sure that they also help these gears move very smoothly together. Are we good so far? All right. Thank you so much. I want to now change the conversation a little bit to also try and understand that, okay, in theory, we have these gears. We're all coming from very different global contexts. But in your work, there can be factors, there can be government processes or media processes or citizen processes that help your work. And there can also be certain factors that hinder or stop your work. So we're going to share a Mentimeter for the next 7 to 10 minutes or so. The slide for the Mentimeter is here. And we just want to hear from you. What are the processes that help your work with government, media, civil society, citizens? And similarly, what is it that hinders your work with all of these bodies as well? You can scan the QR code or also just click on the link in the chat. And I will switch screens. Lovely. Thank you so much. The wrong slide. Just give me a second. Right. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Okay, unwillingness is one answer that we have gotten. Openness is another answer that we have gotten. Hang on. Previous connections, strategy. All right. These are all factors that help our engagement with government. Trust, limited coordination, a good rapport. Okay, so that could come in trust as well. All right, bureaucracy, communication. Interesting, collaboration. Let's move to the next slide where we actually answer what are the factors that help or enable your work with media? So this is the second gear. What helps with media as well? I think if we start putting in the answers, hopefully it'll pop up. Trust building. Okay, great. Fantastic. Connections. Transparency. Interesting. Accountability. Mutual support. Very interesting. Similar values. Friendship. Okay. Useful information for them. All right. Personal connection and relationships has come up a few times. Transparency. All right. Wonderful. We're going to pause here to then go to the next piece of the puzzle, which is what factors help your work with civil society. So partners that you've met in this room, or individuals that you've worked with in your own local context, what helps with civil society? Align core values, networks, shared values, trust, flexibility, transparency. Networks, partnership, ideological compatibility, very important, protection of rights, trust, shared commitment, again, very, very important and very different from values. Open communication, very important. Common agenda, interesting. All right. We will now soon move to if there is a Zoom feature to authorize translation, I'm just looking at the chat. I'm happy to. If that's possible. Okay, human rights, ideological compatibility. All right. The next slide looks at what factors hinder or stop your work with media. Stop. So this is, earlier we said what supports. Now we say, what makes it difficult? What makes it just not work and you can't figure it out? What is that thing? Profit orientation, very important. Not knowing how to, also very, very important. Shared interests. Connectivity challenges, interesting. Lack of incentive. Partisanship, again, very, very important. Conflicting interests, limited knowledge. Declining trust. Low pay. Rude political environment, all right. Okay, so knowledge gaps, predetermined mindsets, I see that in the chat. Censorship, absolutely. Declining trust. Misinformation, very important one as well. Corporate ownership. All right. We'll now move to the next slide, which is what are the factors that hinder or stop your work with civil society? So again, partners. We said that if we have a shared alignment and collaboration, everything is just beautiful and it goes off without a hitch. But what actually stops our work from civil society? Betrayal, very important. Limited funds. very important. Conflicts, misalignment of goals. Envy, okay. Competition. Political influence. Ego and vanity, very important. Unhealthy competition. Collectivizing. Different focus areas. Again, alignment is really, really important here. Suspicion, interesting. And funding, all right. I think the last slide that we're going to work on together before we just come back to the deck and just do a small debrief of what we're seeing is what stops your work with government. And as you can see, some of these answers have already flown in. We have bureaucratic delays, sudden shifts in the political system, bureaucratic procedures, corruption, lack of political will, power gaps, complicated bureaucracy, co-option risk, okay, makes sense. Unwillingness and a lack of will, surveillance, very important. All right. All right. Fantastic. So I will just want to thank all of you for being such open and excitable participants in this exercise as well. Let's go back to the gears, right? So now we've said that certain things in these different gears are working and certain things are not working. Does anyone perhaps want to come off mute and just share some of their reflections from what we saw on the screen, common challenges that all of us are facing globally? If you can raise your hand, then I can perhaps call upon you as well. Anyone would just like to come on and share just some reflections on what you felt or how the process went for you, what you learned? I can start by sharing a little bit of mine, which is I actually realized that a lot of the challenges that I face in my day-to-day work are not just common to me. I learned that a lot of us are facing clampdowns on media. A lot of us are facing challenges with paid media and the fact that there's very low pay in the media sector as well that prevents us from working actively with the media. That was quite interesting to me. Would anybody like to come on and share, or you can also put it in the chat, but I'll just wait for a minute in case anyone wants to chime in.
So you would like to give an input regarding the question?
Yes, or how you observed all of the different answers coming in and how that made you reflect on your own work.
I mean, most of the civil society stakeholders everywhere in different parts of the earth, they do share the same ideas regarding their communication and collaboration with government. In the meantime, also they see the role of civil society and media very important towards addressing the needs of community. So the opinions and feedback from the participants here, it's almost similar in terms of the values and elements that civil society organizations do represent. So this is the way how I saw the inputs provided by the participants here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Aki says discontentment towards the government is universal. And I think that is very much where I want to focus some of our energy and time today, and maybe just try and see. Sorry, Mohammed, you have your hand raised. I can come to you before going ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I can kind of reflect on the answers of our friends here, but kind of wonder, none of them are kind of tackle the problems with citizens themselves and community themselves. Because when we see the community, when we face the community, they are sometimes opportunistic, skeptical, and unwilling to cooperate, and many challenges arises from citizens as well. And I just wonder how we tackle all these problems coming from the citizens themselves, something like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I have a reflection to share on that, and I'll just do that before I come to Mr. Pal as well for his comment. Frequently, people ask me in my line of work, does the government really listen? And more often than not, my answer is yes, but it's the hardest to get the citizen to speak up, right? So I can share an example, especially coming back to Aki's comment about how discontentment towards the government is universal. Um, I wanted to share an example from my experience having worked in the domain as well, right? So I had mentioned that Civis is a non-profit organization that works on enabling greater participation in draft laws and policies. So the government in India puts out every draft law or policy before it gets passed in the public domain. And citizens have an opportunity to comment on it, to share their feedback, to share improvements. Now, in one particular case that we worked on very recently, it was an amendment to the disabilities law because a lot of individuals were getting access to identity cards. These are identity cards that are meant for people with disabilities, but people were misusing the access and they were getting their disability identity cards wrongfully. The government decided that they wanted to clamp down and make the process very difficult for persons with disabilities to get the identity card. What happened then was that we used these gears, right? We used the gear of citizen to pull in a large number of voices that could influence or that could represent to government a very cohesive voice and approach. That was done through the tiny little gear of media and social media being a part of it. Alongside that, civil society organizations and other individual groups came together, collectives came together to share their feedback. And all of this feedback was taken and then shared with the wheel of the government. In just 2 months, that's just about 60 days, the government actually rolled back on the draft legislation. And they said that it will make things very difficult. It is not practical, and we are not going to go ahead with this, right? So in our line of work, we see those examples day in and day out. But the reason that this worked here was because the citizenry all came together. They had been strong advocates for disabilities rights for many years before that. So they had a sense that this system can be shaped if we raise our voices. And that is something that actually moved the needle. So to Mohammed's point, yes, we need to talk a lot more about citizens. Their challenges are very different and disaggregated, and that's definitely something that we need to go into a little bit more as well. Mr. Pal, would you like to come in with your comment or question?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. This is Bidhan Chandrapal, founder of Prabha, and I am honored to represent Bangladesh in this global conversation. And we have actually been connected with Demo.Reset for quite some time through CE India, and we are sincerely grateful for that connection. And thank you for presenting the issues so thoughtfully and structuring today's discussion so clearly. And the presentation was, both insightful and inspiring. But I would like to share a few personal reflections. Just I'm thinking there was a time when, fears shaped social behavior in our societies. Fears of religion, law, of elders, and of authorities. Today, many of those fears have weakened. Respect for trustable institutions has, weakened, and legal consequences often do not work as intended. And revenge for for elders or moral authorities have significantly declined. And in this reality, building trust is a difficult journey, and sustaining deliberative democratic practices is even more challenging. In countries like ours, problems are not becoming smaller, they are growing larger and more complex. And this is why the approach matters deeply. And we need approaches that grows from small to large, models that smart I mean start locally, but gradually touch many lives, and initiatives uh, that engage young people and motivate them to practice sustainable deliberative democracy. Long-term step-by-step strategies are essential to move society from one stage to transform to another. So this is my realization, so actually. And my question to you is actually, what practical steps or strategies can be implemented to ensure that these approaches are, replicable, sustainable, and scalable? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Pal. That takes us very neatly, nicely, and wonderfully to the next piece of our work, which is how do we do this? We've talked conceptually about the what we need to do. We've spoken conceptually about the what needs to change, who are we working with, but how do we do this? And that's going to be a large chunk of the conversation that we have now. So I'm really enjoying and appreciating everybody's active participation in the chat as well as on screen. So please, please, please do keep it coming as we go along as well. Where we are in this stepwise journey is that currently we have understood the actors, right? We know our different gears of democracy and how they function. Now we need to move to the next stage where we've also in certain cases acknowledged the local context, right? We've acknowledged the local context, but also seen that some of our challenges are universal. Like Mohammad mentioned about the citizens and the challenges that that brings, or like somebody put down about envy between partners and ego in civil society and the challenges that that brings as well, right? So we've acknowledged our context, we've understood the actors. Now it's time for us to actually design an appropriate solution. And that's where, to Mr. Pal's point, things get quite interesting and fun. So I'm going to take this in a couple of different chunks. Each chunk will have a tool that is put together. At the end of my session, you will also get a link to all of the tools. I'll put that in the chat. So don't worry about searching for it right now or taking screenshots or whatever. Please feel free to, but you will get the tools and the detailed guides on how to use the tools immediately after the presentation is done. So as I begin, again, an invitation to keep this interactive and also to acknowledge that we are all in this together. We may be disparate across different contexts, but very much one. Let's start by talking a little bit about problem definition. And one of the things that I want to go into is that Fabian also put in his slide, the first issue is diagnosis, right? Diagnosing a problem and actually taking that to the next level. I also want to shout out to a number of our mentees here who are part of organizations that have been started a long time ago, but their collective intelligence practice is new, and that is something that has come because they have done a lot of work in trying to diagnose a particular problem and then yield an output or result, right? So it sounds simple, right? Define the problem. I see the problem. Let's just take a small example. The problem is that we don't have enough funding for CSO partnerships, and that's why perhaps it doesn't work. But when I say that, when I make that statement, it's a statement that all of us relate to, right? That there's not enough funding, we're all competitive because of funding. So if we get the right funding, all of a sudden things will start to work and we will work together. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The reason being that oftentimes what tends to happen and why partnerships perhaps don't work out is because you don't have the same value alignment or work styles. Now, in this simple problem statement, we have also understood that, okay, there are 2 or 3 more layers to go deeper into and to try and understand, okay, what can make a successful civil society partnership. In my experience, again, defining problems has meant a surface level definition. It's meant that I have understood one facet of it, but I need to keep questioning. If any of you have heard of the rule of 12 whys, right? Every new idea should go through 12 whys to really determine what the root cause of that issue is. This is something that I feel very deeply about, and this graphic on the right side just shows you what it is. The iceberg, what you see on top, is a small portion. 60% of the issue is actually what you see below. So how do we know if we're focusing on the right issue? Thankfully, we are not the only people that have had this problem before. And there is a very interesting and important toolkit known as the DIY toolkit for problem definition. This toolkit, and I'll just try and zoom perhaps if I can. Just give me a minute. All right. This toolkit essentially looks at what are the key issues that you're trying to solve and why is it important. Who is it a problem for? Is it a problem for citizens? Is it a problem for government, civil society, just for me personally, or a particular local area? What social and cultural factors actually shape this problem? In our case, for example, with the disability identity card issue that I had said, there is rampant misuse of government entitlements, and that is the cultural context in which the government was also creating this new law. What evidence do you have that this is worth the investment? So here you put down, okay, how many people would be impacted by such a problem? How many, what is the economic impact of it? What is the cost of solving this problem? What's the benefit of solving this problem? And all of this can be done entirely through secondary research. The last and most interesting bucket is, can you think of this problem in a different way, or could you reframe it? And the reason why this is important is because very often, more often than not, we get set in our problem solution matrix, right? We say that, okay, we see X as a problem and Y is the solution that we are able to do. So we will continue to do and scale Y. But actually, perhaps the problem can be reframed in a different way. I can share another example. Again, in our work, we realized that the problem was that not while Civis was working on making laws and opening them out for public feedback, a lot of government bodies weren't actually putting out those laws for public feedback. So till we made sure that a lot of government bodies were putting out laws, giving us enough time to actually mobilize around it, we couldn't solve for that problem. We thought, okay, maybe we can go to the courts. We can think about having a legal intervention to get more governments to do this kind of work. Very quickly, what we realized is that if we reframe the problem and we recognize the people, the individuals, the actors who are actually going the extra mile, chances are that they will actually become the inspiration for others to follow suit. And so it's happened. We now recognize certain laws for having good consultative practices every year. And that reframing of the problem has actually made a lot more laws and policies adhere to a higher quality of deliberation. So that's why reframing the problem gets to be very interesting. I'll move to the next tool. Of course, my eyes are still very much on the chat, so feel free to put it in because I wouldn't want for us to lose the momentum of that wonderful conversation that we've been having. I'll move to the next tool and then I'll take a pause for any questions and then so on and so forth with every next two tools. Yeah, let us go ahead. All right. Then we come to a very interesting point. How many of us have used, are familiar with, or are keen advocates for user personas? If you can raise your hand or send me an emoji if you've used it before, if you're excited by it. All right, I'm just looking for more thumbs ups. Okay, thank you, Alma. All right, Aki. Thank you. All right. So 2 or 3. We'll talk a little bit about why user personas are very important and very interesting as well. The first step was problem definition. Now you actually have to understand the second box. Who is this a problem for, and is it really a problem? One way to do that is to create user personas. These personas are an archetype that help us understand who our end beneficiaries are, and then based on that understanding, help us take actions that can help solve for those pain points of those personas as well. These frameworks help us identify pain points as well as why somebody would actually work with us and why somebody would not engage with us, which is something which is very interesting and important. Personas can be informed by secondary research, for example, Google Analytics data, your Instagram data and information. And these little data points actually really help us understand what and why this person works the way that they do, right? So for example, if we're working with a lot of young citizens and we know that most of them we are reaching through social media, but their social media usage is mostly at night, then we need to be able to design a tool or get access to a tool like Hootsuite or something else for social media marketing, which posts our messages only at night. Right. So the idea really is that it helps us understand who we're working with and how we can serve them better. Here's an example from Civis, and I apologize again. I think the font is a little bit light, but I will share this with you later as well. So we were working on a lot of different policies with senior citizens, and we realized that we needed to understand, we are a very young team, and we realized that we needed to understand our beneficiaries a little bit better. So we created a persona of somebody called Maria. Maria is a fictitious persona, not a real person. But we, by understanding her a little bit better, understand what drives her and motivates her. So Maria is 56 years old. She's a parent, an empty nester. The children have flown the coop. She's young at heart and very creative. She finds different ways to spend her time. She's a storyteller. She's a green warrior and is passionate about her own circles of influence. She also likes to promote indigenous art and craft. Now, how is this relevant to Maria's civic action? Does anyone want to share how some of these personas or pieces on interest or what you're reading on the screen are relevant to making Maria an active citizen? So while I wait for the comments to come in the chat as well, and as some of you are reading this, I think one of the things that we actually realized when making Maria's persona, which was the most useful, was this. She's comfortable using LinkedIn and Facebook, but finds other platforms a bit confusing. So we realized that we had to have a very low touch way to reach seniors that they could actually be comfortable with and they would also trust. So in that way, it actually changed the scope of how we would engage with a senior citizen. Similarly, linguistics, interests in the radio tell us about how we can reach Maria, how we can actually engage with Maria. And I think one of the important things that we also realized, so we took this user persona and then we spoke to people who were in the age bracket of 56 to about 65. And one of the things that we learned from actual conversations and in-person conversations with them, and I'll come to the interviews as well as one of the tools, was just the fact that a lot of them would not engage with us if it was a completely online, faceless interface. They wanted to see people, they wanted to hear real voices. And again, this changed how we create a intervention for people in a certain age bracket as well at Civis. I'll just take the next exercise, but before I go there, just want to kind of ask everyone how we're feeling, any questions or thoughts that you have for me at this juncture. Alma, you had your hand raised earlier. In case you want to bring that up again, I'm happy to take that, and then we can move forward.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I cannot turn on my camera because it's raining on my home, so the signal is not very good. Yeah, probably. I'd like to share a bit about the experience from Kota Kita. So we don't really like have persona in while we are developing our deliberative practices or our project, but I'm kind of related with this persona that you presented. Like, for example, because our main group is young people, we try to make our digital platform that we design for them to like really accessible for all. Therefore, we engage representative from young people from like diverse social identities, such as in terms of like the culture, the religion, also the disability. So, for example, in terms of disability, we engage the people with visual impairment and also hearing impairment, and we kind of got how we should address their barriers in using digital platform by, for example, providing the feature that is accessible for screen reader, and also like make the design simple and not like very and not like using difficult phrases, so it will help them. But on the other hand, we have like other kind of request or like insights from the other participants, like because the young people that we are engaged with are very like excited. They have lots of spirit. They want this digital platform not only accommodate them in terms of like digital engagement, but also will able to make them interact face to face. So they request that this digital platform should be able to facilitate the hybrid mode, not only the online, but also they want to meet offline because we want to meet each other. We want to have this strong sense of belonging, etc. So we are currently like find it very challenging because we have to, like think about the safeguarding so that it's not only accessible for like diverse social identities, but also ensure that this digital platform is safe. So I don't know, Antara, if you have any thoughts on how to accommodate this different and various needs of the people that we are engaged with. I would love to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alma, for that point. And one of the factors of sustainability that Fabian also mentioned was social inclusion and making sure that we are reaching all diverse stakeholder groups. Alma, you've touched upon a very, very important point. And to be honest, it sounds like a lot of the work that you are already doing while trying to create high contrast screens and making it screen reader accessible. All of those ways are ways in which we can actually engage people with different kinds of disabilities. there's just two things that I would want to come to on your point, and then we can move ahead as well, because again, you've segued me really nicely into the next activity and exercise that we wanted to do. The two things that I wanted to mention were, one, a lot of people do audits. So you can actually bring somebody in to do a website audit, or to do a quick audit to see whether there are different ways in which you can make the platform or tools digitally more secure and also accessible. And the second thing that I wanted to raise is that oftentimes I've learned that people in a certain community will have their own idea of what they find to be the most useful and user-friendly. And sometimes it's just about doing a good old interview and asking them, okay, what works for you? If we were to serve you better, what are some of the safeguards that you would consider the most? And we can, of course, go from there as well. So my sense is that your approach is already very solid. What I would encourage is that by using the personas, you can then put it down, but also you can transfer that knowledge within the team and to volunteers in a very seamless and accessible way going forward as well. Thanks for that point, Alma. And I'm also looking forward to going into this in a lot more as we continue to speak over the next few months. I'll just move to the next key question, which again comes back to Mr. Pal's point about how do you define a program, right? So far, we've still been working with the individuals or the groups, but how do you define a program? So an exercise that I found very useful, and there's no template for this really, but it can just be a simple Excel sheet that you build out, is a design thinking tool that one of my mentors taught me very early in my journey at Civis. And it's something that I hold very dearly, because every time we start a program at Civis, we actually do this exercise as a team. The exercise is called nouns and verbs. It's essentially nouns and verbs, which are the building blocks of a sentence, right? So it provides, one provides the subject matter and the second provides the action. The noun is a word that names a place or a person or an idea. And if you can put a the or an in front of it, it's likely a noun. So let's say the civil society, the government, the media, and so on and so forth. The verb is the doing action. So that is what describes a state of being or how the noun is behaving. So can you say the media, for example, that becomes the noun, will cover Civis' stories because X, right? And that becomes the verb. So we want the media to cover a particular story about our program. And by putting this down again, we start to understand what are the different ways in which the media and civil society organizations interact with one another, what are high priority items for them and what are slightly lower priority items for them as well. We have an activity, but perhaps owing to time, I'll maybe just go through the rest of the deck and then come back to this. It's an independent activity. The idea is that you pick two nouns, be it an actor like government or media or civil society, and you outline 5 verbs or actions that each of them will do in relation to your program that you run. You should frame this according to your specific sustainability priority. So if your sustainability priority is community anchoring and social legitimacy, maybe you pick 2 nouns. I need the media to recognize me for more social legitimacy, and I need government to actually back or support my work. And then 5 verbs. What do I need to get them to do to actually meet that goal for me? So we'll come back to this in a little bit. I do want to take us through a couple more tools that I have ready, being mindful that we have about 15 to 20 minutes left for the presentation. Again, really welcoming everybody's inputs in the chat as well as comments by unmuting also. How many of us have done an interview before? We've led an interview or participated in an interview. I have, so I'm going to raise my hand. Others can as well if you've led an interview or participated in an interview before. Okay. He has. Muhammad has. Icha has. Okay. Rogers and Alejandro have as well. Lovely. If I could maybe call upon, and I'll just request maybe Rogers, Alejandro, Aki, those of us who haven't spoken before, what was your interview experience like? And how much do you relate with this statement that perhaps what people say and what they do are very different things? I'll just invite any of you to either respond in the chat or go on unmute and share your feedback. Aki, would you like to go ahead, or Alejandro, one of the two?
Okay, I guess I can share a bit of my experience with interviews. So earlier on the earlier stage of the project, of the deliberative project that we made for this Demo.Reset, we interviewed government officials to understand like what are their priorities, and also their stances in general about our program. In doing that, we chose to come to the government office because that's the most preferable place for them. So we want to ensure that the place is comfortable for the interviewee, and also we also prepare some sets of questions, but we kind of make it semi-structured, so we are open to the any other development when we interviewed with them. And also we prepared some set of consent form to ensure that some kind of like we want to make them know that the data will be anonymous. It's going to be only used for the research, but not going to be published in a commercial way. And and also and the interview process itself, as you wrote down here, we listen to them attentively and just try to be patient. And sometimes we also like incorporate local language because the project is conducted in Java Island, which has a local Javanese language. So sometimes we use that for the introduction and also for the closing. So basically that's the overview of the interview process. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot how to unmute. Thank you so much, Aki. That's a very, very interesting perspective. Again, just reiterating things that worked and are worth following. One is being respectful of the place and space that the person inhabits, and making sure that we go to them sometimes if it's required instead of calling them to us. The second, listening attentively, a very important point that Aki mentioned as well. The third, adapting ourselves to what they may feel most comfortable in. And I'm sure there was another step that I can't emphasize more, which is taking back those learnings to the rest of your team, and how important that is. So in interviews, we have an influx of information, right? We are not just asking questions and getting answers, but we are also perceiving what is their tone, how are they sitting, how busy are they, how empty are they, what's on their desk. Oh, okay, are they also a runner? Because they have all of these medals behind their desk, right? So we're perceiving our external environment, we're perceiving the person, and we're perceiving what they say. It is very, very important for us to take all of that knowledge, capture it in the best possible way, and share that back with our teams as well. Because when we're designing solutions, it's more often than not just one team who is taking the lead on it, but multiple teams that need to be a part of that same experience. They should feel what it felt like to walk into the government office. They should feel what it felt like to have the tone of the officer. And this is something that sometimes we often skip just because time is short and there's just so much to get done. But I can't emphasize again enough how important this process of documentation is. Also, where it is practical, again, in a government office, it may not be practical, but wherever it is practical, it's very important to also include diverse prompts. Right? So not just to speak about what your agenda item is, but to ask them curiosities and questions, to have some interactive tasks built in so that you can actually see, is this person staying true to what they say and believe, or are they also doing something slightly different, which is perhaps a contrast to what they are saying. Informal interviews, again, Mr. Pal says, to bring out rich experience and encourage open and honest conversation, which is very difficult in formal settings. They encourage youth leaders and students to conduct informal interviews so that they, again, change the power dynamic and bring in fresh faces and excitement into that process as well. And this allows them not only to gather information, but also gain deeper insights into the realizations beyond just a surface level interaction. So wonderful. Here we have two gears that work. The citizen is also doing the job of the civil society that are working very beautifully in tandem. And we also have another throwback to our analogy of the iceberg, right? It's deep insights and personal realizations beyond the surface. Let me move ahead, but if I did miss calling upon anybody else and you'd like to share your reflections, please feel free to do so as well. You can do it in the chat or you can raise your hand and I will come to you in the next slide as well. Now, things get a little bit more complicated with the theory of change. How many of us have used the theory of change before in our work? And if you could also just share with me emoji to show how you feel about the theory of change, that would be very helpful. In my experience, I'm a little bit scared of it. It just seems very complicated and daunting. So I'm a little bit scared of theories of change, but how does everyone feel about it if you've used it before? Okay. I think Icha is a little surprised or shocked by this. And it's like a mind-opening experience for Icha. I love that. All right, fantastic. This particular little graphic, it really describes it very nicely. It says that we go from one complicated statement and then just say a miracle occurs, and then we get the output that we want, right? And here you have a gentleman saying, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2. So a theory of change is very much that. It's what helps us say, bridge the gap between the problems that we see and the solution that we want in a very clear and actionable and explicit way, right? Explicit meaning direct and realistic. We solve for many interconnected problems in the work that we do, and many of them are new and untested. So by developing a theory of change, you put down what you know, your key hypothesis, and the initiatives which will help you move the needle. I'll go back to an example that I shared a little bit earlier. Our key hypothesis is that citizens should participate more in drafting laws and policies that impact them. However, a key challenge or risk is the fact that if the laws aren't put out in the public domain in the first place, then citizens don't have the opportunity to share their feedback or participate, right? So how do we solve for that? By defining our problem, we realize that we need to actually change the narrative, flip the problem, and we need to create platforms for recognition. So now that actually forms a part of our theory of change. I thought about putting Civics' theory of change here, and then I realized that it's so scary. I don't want to do that. It just like has so many factors. I'm not going to put everybody through it. I will give you a glimpse of what it is. But let's just take a very simple example of what this theory of change could look like. Imagine if we were an organization that was working on raising the average household income in rural India, right? The hypothesis is that that rural community doesn't have access to electricity. But if we allow them to purchase a solar system, if we maybe give them a grant to purchase a solar system, a solar light, it has increased hours of light. All of a sudden, the children in the family can study, or they can engage in income generating activities. The parents can, not the children in the house can study, and the parents can engage in income generating activities. Perhaps if it's embroidery or handicrafts late at night, it's something that they can actually do, which they couldn't earlier because of an inability and inaccessibility of electricity. Right. So this is a theory of change that says that while my goal is to actually get to a higher income household and more prosperity in rural India, the one intervention that I will focus on, I will not focus on giving access to education or schools, that another organization might focus on. But the one intervention that I will focus on will simply be on giving more productive time in that person's day-to-day life. Right? So this is a very simple theory of change. And to Isha's point, yes, this does actually feel a little bit intimidating. But thankfully, there's enough literature and research for us to be able to do this ourselves very easily. I'll be sharing after I stop presenting a brief ID Insight article, which actually has an interactive questionnaire. So you can start answering those questionnaires, and it will help you build your theory of change as you go as well. So I'll pause here. It seems a little intimidating. It's a little bit scary. I've used a red highlight, which is not helpful when speaking about something like this. But any thoughts or questions before we move to the last or second last slide for the evening? I also just want to shout out to Sanskriti, to Mr. Pal, and a bunch of other people who I know, and of course the Demo.Reset team, for having very, very nicely put together theories of change. So as Melissa said in the beginning, this is not just an opportunity for us to learn from each other or in this room, but to continue the conversations and connections. So reach out to them and ask them, how did you do your theory of change? What were the challenges? Did you do it for the entire organization, or did you just do it for one small part? Those are all questions that I'd also love the answers to. So feel free to ask and share back what you learn. Okay, I'm guessing that theory of change is so crystal clear, we have no questions about it. I'll give it 30 more seconds to see if we have any further questions, and then move from there. All right, fantastic. I did promise you a glimpse of what Civics' theory of change looks like, so I will share it with you. It's a model of change. And the idea is that we've taken a very complicated document and made it slightly less complicated by actually breaking up and using the analogy of a loop. At Civis, we want to be in constant conversation between citizens and government, and we believe that that will build public trust. And we do this through a model where we build awareness about live laws, current laws that people can share feedback on. We do focused outreach with affected stakeholders. We forge civil society partnerships, try and break the barriers of cynicism, egotism, lack of funds, to reach citizens' voices and come together with a common purpose. Once we do that, we also provide the government with digital tools and processes to engage citizens so that they can run their deliberative practices better. We build deep partnerships so that we not only just help them with the tools, but also with the knowledge, know-how, and capacity building support to get citizens' feedback and put it into practice. And then ultimately, the goal that we're driving all of this towards is laws which are strengthened with high quality public input. So this is a broad snapshot of the theory of change, or the engagement loop that we call it at Civis. And again, something that is work in progress. We haven't perfected it yet, but it is something that we're trying to explain. I'll just come to why the theory of change is important, and then come to my last slide before I hand it back to Melly and Fabian. A lot of what I've explained today, even my own colleagues will say, man, so much documentation. Like, we know all of this stuff. Why do we have to put it down? Why do we have to write it? Right? And I think a lot of the reason that I'm a big advocate and I'm a big supporter of documentation is so that we create a public record. Right? We spoke earlier and very, very pertinently pointed out about how we have a lot of fluctuations in global scenarios, right? Even right now, we're precariously placed in different parts of the world. What we do as civil society is that we create a notion or a fresh idea of change and how that can be brought about. You saw on our slide with all of the mentees that all of us are 2000s babies, right? None of us were there perhaps before that, or at least focusing on deliberative practices. So we've created, we've innovated, we've built something. Now, irrespective of whether the individual, Antara, the organization Civis, continues to have the resources to do what it does, these documentations help us build a public record. And a public record is one of the most important and underrated schemes of innovation that we are building today. So I want to just close my slides with one very, very important thought. Fabian mentioned inclusivity, and I hope that that's something that we've covered at every single stage. If not, I'm happy to direct specific questions around inclusivity as well. But most importantly, resilience. Can anybody put down in the chat what resilience means to them? I had a year not so long ago, I think about 2 years ago, where my New Year's resolution, my personal New Year's resolution was to be more resilient. What does that mean to us? I see some things in the chat. All right, Mr. Pal makes a very pertinent reflection about the theory of change. What does resilience mean to you? Andrea, if you'd also like to give it a shot, feel free to share as well. Capacity to adapt to circumstances. Thank you, Melissa. That's very important. Super. It is very much the capacity to adapt to circumstances. It is the capacity to bounce back from unfortunate circumstances. The will to follow, the ability to stand by values and visions, all so true. What's really interesting to me as I read these responses, right? The ability to persist, adapt, and demonstrate capability even in the midst of difficult challenges. Absolutely. Absolutely. What I find really interesting in all of this is the word capacity and ability. It is our own personal capacity and ability that comes together to form a capable and able team, that comes together to found a capable solution to a big problem. And the reason that I wanted to focus on this a little bit is that we frequently and very often forget what it takes from us as individuals in civil society to deliver and to be a part of all of these wicked problems that we're trying to solve. Anybody who is in perhaps like, let's say, a sales job or something a little bit more direct, marketing, they see the output of their input very, very quickly. In civil society, we need to have a long-standing patience. Maybe in my lifetime, if everything goes well, India will have a stronger and more trustworthy democracy, right? That's tremendously long. So how do I present and preserve myself? How do I build that internal resilience for me to be able to then deliver to solve that problem? There's many, many different ways. And maybe we won't have time to go into all of that today. But I do want to leave everybody with the idea that we as individuals and as individual citizens have deep roots, right? From which our energies and resources grow. Our energies and resources can only grow if we as people are not deplenished, right? That we have capacity and ability within ourselves. And only then can we bring that to the space as well. So I'll just leave you with a brief 2 lines before it's 7:22. We have about 8 minutes, and Fabian needs a few minutes as well to share a form, and I will also share the resources that I promised. Just one line. In uncertain times, and times will be uncertain, we need to stay true to our organization's mission and grow deeper roots, not just as a company or an organization, but individually. And this as a collective will help us grow and blossom all together. So I'll pause there with that. And there's a lot more to follow. I did mention that there are 5 such modules. We've only hit module 1. So for those of us that are not part of the mentorship, we'd love to still see you for the rest of the 4 modules and open sessions as well. You've been a wonderful audience. And I think Melissa has put a lovely slide right at the end to ask you what key ideas emerged and any questions or contributions that you might have. I'll just stop sharing, Melissa, Fabian, if in case you want to take that over.
Yeah,
So
go
that
on.
super, thank you. I'll just post the links in the group while we wait for questions. Thank you, Ramadan and Iyambar, Aman. Thank you, Asi, for the hearts. Any thoughts or questions, feel free to ask. I'm just posting the resources as well.
Thank you so much, Antara, for presentation. It was very delightful. I would like to invite you to answer a short survey about this space. For us, it's very important. As you know, we will have another 3 open spaces. The next one will be April the 7th with Vanessa Gonzalez from Ciudadanía Inteligente from Chile. She also will help us to understand, and she will also share a lot of information regarding with how to design deliberative models in order to make them in an advocacy way to contribute to the democracy of our different countries and contexts. So I will invite you again to fill the survey and help you. And sorry, and thank you so much for joining us today in this session. Thank you, Antara, again for your presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. I just want to take a moment to thank the entire Demo.Reset team for putting together this wonderful global community where we're different but very much the same. And also just to all of our participants today before I mute the mic to say thank you for your questions, for being so honest in your reflections, for giving me an opportunity to learn. It was a pleasure being here today.
Thank you. Don't forget to fill this survey. Also, Antara share with you some resources that, of course, will be very, very helpful for your different works. So thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you. Have a good week. Bye.